My son called and asked, "Why are you asking for $7,000 as a settlement?" I was really surprised to hear this. It turned out his wife had been in a car accident that hurt someone else. I couldn't believe it. The woman sitting across from me at lunch was his wife, the one who was supposed to have caused the accident. I hesitated, unsure of what to think. Then, suddenly, my son hung up. I started to think it might be a trick, but his number was clearly on my phone's caller ID. Fuming with anger, I was just about to refuse when my daughter-in-law smiled and intervened. "Let's pay it now. I have a good plan." As we worked together on it, things started to take an unexpectedly interesting turn. "Mom, I finally landed a job," my 32-year-old son George happily told me. "That's wonderful news," I responded. George had been struggling with odd jobs and part-time work for a long time, and honestly, I had almost lost hope that he would find a steady job. Eventually he married Olivia, a woman he had become close to at work. Despite being 2 years younger than George, she was responsible and had a pleasant personality. We never had any problems between me and Olivia. Even though George and Olivia didn't live with me, Olivia and I would sometimes have lunch together. With a capable daughter-in-law and George having a good job, I can finally relax. But before George married Olivia, he had a bad habit. Even though he didn't have any money coming in, he would spend it recklessly and buy whatever he wanted. He even took money from my wallet a few times. "Why would you do that?" I scolded him firmly, trying to get an answer, but George just frowned and turned away, refusing to talk. Taking money from your parents' wallet and acting immature, even at his age, made me cry. Because of this experience, I was a bit worried about how George's marriage with Olivia would turn out. "Hey Olivia, how's George doing? Is he causing you any problems?" "Oh, not at all," she assured me. "I was worried he might take money from your wallet or make mistakes." Olivia flexed her arm, emphasizing her point. "It seems like my son's household is well taken care of by Olivia." "Oh, that's a relief. With you around, everything will be fine." I sighed, thankful that George had married such a capable wife. One day, while we were having our usual lunch together, my daughter-in-law and I were enjoying our meal. Suddenly, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I checked the screen. It was my son calling. "Hello?" "George, what's going on? Why the sudden call?" I asked, taken aback by the urgency in his voice. "Listen carefully, Mom. Olivia had an accident while driving. The other party got injured, and they're really upset. They're asking for $7,000 as a settlement," George explained quickly. I glanced over at Olivia, who looked just as bewildered as I felt. George, if you can gather the money, please let me know right away." "Bye," George said abruptly before hanging up, leaving me stunned. After the call, I sat there, trying to make sense of it all. Olivia was sitting right in front of me. How could she have had an accident? I wondered if George had misunderstood something, but the tension in the air was undeniable. "Mom, are you all right?" Olivia asked, her face showing concern about the call from George. "I'm not sure what's going on, but it sounds serious. George said you were in an accident," I explained, still trying to process everything. "What?" I exclaimed, feeling completely overwhelmed by the situation and a sudden demand for money. Olivia reassured me and listened intently, her own confusion mirroring mine. "I haven't been in any accident, and I have no idea what George is talking about," Olivia said, resting her chin on her hand as she thought. "Maybe we should consider that this is some kind of scam," she suggested cautiously. But it was George's voice for sure. Unless he suddenly got sick and sounds different, but he seemed fine this morning. If it wasn't him, then who could it be? I wondered aloud, puzzled. The phone number displayed on my mobile matched George's. Olivia and I exchanged baffled looks, both lost in thought. If you haven't been in an accident, then that demand for $7,000 must be a lie. But why would someone make up such a large sum? And I don't fully understand George's spending habits either, Olivia sighed, trying to make sense of it. "Well, sometimes he spends money on trivial things when you see his room," Olivia explained. "What do you mean by that?" I asked, seeking clarification. Olivia then revealed George's recent actions, and I felt my anger flare. "George did that? Unbelievable. I won't tolerate it," I exclaimed, reaching for my phone to call George and give him a piece of my mind. But Olivia stopped me gently with a smile. "No need. Let's handle this strategically," Olivia said calmly. "Why?" "I have a plan," Olivia continued, her eyes sparkling with mischief. As she explained her revenge idea for George, I couldn't help but grin. That sounds intriguing. Let's teach him a lesson. Exactly, it's time he learns, Olivia declared firmly. And so Olivia and I teamed up, ready to leave George speechless. 3 hours later, I pretended to fall for the deception and called my son back. I've got the $7,000 ready. Let's meet in person for the exchange, I said over the phone. Wait a minute, came the cautious reply. Do we have to wire the money? No, that won't work these days. Banks scrutinize large wire transfers. It's safer to hand it over in person, I explained. Okay, where should we meet? My son asked. I specified a location and prepared a paper bag with the $7,000 inside. Sorry for the delay, my son said awkwardly as he arrived, accompanied by a stranger. Who's this? I asked, puzzled by the unfamiliar face. I'm James. I'm the one his wife hit with her car. The man claiming to be the accident victim introduced himself. James had a rugged face with old scars, suggesting he had a tough past. It was clear he wasn't just an ordinary person. George grinned with relief. Good, he brought the money. Now hand over that $7,000 to me, George demanded. Before we proceed, I have a question, I interjected, shifting my gaze between James and George. Sorry for any inconvenience caused. Could you provide us with details about the accident? Come on, does it really matter? George dismissed impatiently. It matters. We might be entitled to insurance compensation, and we need to understand what happened. I insisted, meeting James's annoyed gaze. I was caught up in the accident suddenly, so I can't recall the details, James replied. Yeah, I wasn't with Olivia at the time, so I'm unsure. Isn't that odd? George added, sounding uncertain. How could both of you be so sure she caused the accident in that state? I asked, placing my hand on my hip and tilting my head, pretending to be curious. Wait, is it possible that surveillance cameras or dash cams captured the incident? If so, could you show me the footage? Listen, lady, you've been asking a lot of questions. Are you implying I'm lying? James replied with a threatening undertone. Despite feeling intimidated, I stood my ground. I'm not assuming anything. I'm simply asking for evidence if you have any, I said firmly, maintaining eye contact with James. In the midst of our tense exchange, my son interrupted us. Mom, stop it. Enough. Just hand over that $7,000. George's face betrayed his fear and frustration. Yeah, exactly. There's no evidence. I didn't cause any accidents, George asserted confidently, only to be shocked by the sudden appearance of someone. Olivia, why are you here? I did mention it, but when you called me, Olivia was having lunch with me, George stammered. This doesn't make sense. I didn't hear anything about this. As my son nervously retreated, both Olivia and I closed in on him. Why lie and make your mom prepare $7,000? The game is over. Come clean. We confronted him, ready to present our evidence. Olivia and I had gone to their house together to uncover George's wrongdoing. While he was out, we searched his room and found damning evidence. Among them was a loan agreement indicating he borrowed $7,000 with steep penalties for late payment, but it wasn't from a reputable source. Turning to the man next to George, who claimed to be the accident victim, I asked sharply, Since you weren't involved in any accident, who are you? James chuckled. Caught me. I'm actually a debt collector who lent money to your son. He approached me for help to get the $7,000. Pretending to be the victim seemed like a good idea at the time, James explained, amused by the situation. Meanwhile, my son looked apologetic and shrank back nervously. So now that we know why your son borrowed $7,000, I continued, seeking clarification. Yes, when I saw my son's room, I was at a loss for words. I showed a photo on my smartphone of George's cluttered room. It was packed with a staggering number of anime character dolls. I checked their prices online and was shocked. These figures can be really expensive. Among George's belongings were items worth over $700. We also found receipts showing how much he spent on these figures, which was clear evidence. As a parent, it's difficult for me to admit, but my son is careless with money. His wife manages his entire salary. How could he afford to buy such expensive things? If he had stolen from my wallet, I would have scolded him right away. We now understood why he got into debt, and my daughter-in-law and I were dumbfounded by the trivial reason. I knew about your hobby, but if it cost this much, I would have stopped you. Well, what else could I do? Figures are like works of art. If you don't buy them right then, you might never find such rare items again, Olivia said, glaring at her son with a mix of surprise and anger. George, on the verge of tears, tried desperately to justify himself. I understand that feeling. Please forgive me. With that $7,000, I can finally pay off my debts. But George, borrowing money from questionable sources and making reckless purchases can derail your life, I interjected firmly. Then, I tossed a paper bag to George. He caught it and looked inside, his eyes widening in shock. What's this? Just newspaper cut to look like bills. I'm not so forgiving as to hand over $7,000 when I know I'm being deceived, James chimed in, amused. Well, looks like things have taken a turn. So George, care to explain? James's smug voice made George pale and tremble as he held the bundle of fake money. Olivia was furious with my son. Using my name to deceive money from my own mother, I can't believe it. I'm divorcing you and thinking about cutting off our family ties, she declared. I added firmly, wait, both of you. Despite George's tearful pleas, Olivia and I shook off his grasp and left him behind. As we walked away, I could hear George sobbing while James burst into laughter. Later on, I advised George to sell all the anime figures in his room and use the money to repay his debt. He was clearly troubled but eventually followed my advice and managed to gather the $7,000 to pay back James. I decided to cut ties with my son, but before doing so, I gave him one final piece of advice. From now on, live an honest life. However, George's love for collecting led him back into debt, and soon he found himself pursued by loan sharks. Olivia, once his wife, divorced him long ago, but we still enjoy our lunches together. Reflecting on George's story, Olivia remarked, changing one's way of life isn't easy for people, and we shared a laugh. As I watched Olivia smile, I silently wished for her happiness. How did you find this story? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Until next time.